Okay, it's just about 5:30, so let's get started, please. Welcome, people in the room. We've got members of the board here, members of the Council of Governors, staff, and we also have online similarly, plus some members of the public. So welcome to everybody. I'm hoping, because we always have a bit of fun with this room, so I'm hoping that people are not seeing the back of my head who are online, but can actually see those at the front of the desk. So I'll just introduce ourselves. My name is John Lawler. I'm the chair of the trust and have been since June 2022, and tomorrow is my last day. No sympathy, Carol. On my left is Cathy Elliott, our lead governor. Cathy's been a governor in the trust and the lead governor for about 4 and a bit years now, Cathy.
Yep.
And to my right is Michael Holland, who is our chief exec, joined us in the autumn of 2022. So this is one of those formal meetings that all NHS organisations are required to have. It's technically called an annual members meeting because of this being a foundation trust. It would normally be called in the business sector the annual general meeting, and it's sort of like it carries out both functions really. So what we'll do first is just a bit of procedural stuff. So minutes of the meeting held last year. You hopefully have seen. If you have, let me just ask for checking whether people feel that they're an accurate record of what was discussed. So page 1 lists the people who were present and the people who were in attendance. So the presents were board members and the Council of Governor members, and the attendants were a range of people, staff, patients, public, etc. Page 2, the first substantive page, summarises the annual report highlights, and the annual accounts were required, again, similar to a business in the private sector, we're required to produce annual report each year and an annual account. So the year that we're talking about is looking back on 2024-25, but you will hear from the presentations that have been done, we're also talking about the future. So the future includes what's happening during 25-26 and also where we're at with a plan for us to merge with colleagues at North London Foundation Trust. And I'm delighted to say that Lena Samuels, their chair, is with us tonight. And Lena will have a slot later on just to introduce herself to you. That's that. And then we took a few questions towards the end of the meeting, and you'll see all of that. So for those people who were here last time, are people content that it's an accurate record of the discussion that we've had? Yes. I'm seeing a reasonable number of nods. Thank you for that. Cathy, would you like to just say a little bit about your role, and thank you for a hand over to Michael. I know you're going to do your slot later, but just to introduce yourself a bit more.
As John said, my name is Cathy Elliott, for those who I haven't met, and have been governor at the trust for 4 and a bit years. I started out as stakeholder governor, representing the voluntary and community sector. And because of my professional background and expertise, which had been linked to sexual health and public health, got drawn in for some of the experience that I'd had working on GIDS and some of the public debate about those services. It's been great to see, as John, I'll welcome you along with John and Michael tonight, but really special for me to see people knowing each other and chatting before the meeting. I think everybody's worked hard, particularly in what we're going through and what we've been working on the last year, to know each other better. And it's been really great to see everybody networking before the session. John, I think I'm going to say different things in my presentation. Later, so if that's all right, just to welcome people.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So before I hand over to Michael, any points of clarification from you? If you're content with, we know what we're doing in terms of what the agenda is going to be. So Michael's going to talk through annual report highlights, achievements, performance, and look ahead. Do you want to do it from there, or do you want to?
Well, I think it's someone else's controlling the slides.
I think I'm.
Are you controlling the slides?
John, would you like this?
That's why it may or may not work. But let's see how we go.
No, so you can do it. You can do it. So the first thing I want to, so I'm going to go through highlights really of the last year, and I think John's going to talk about performance in terms of financial performance over last year, and Claire will be talking about some of the highlights, but also looking ahead as well. The first thing I really want to say was to thank John for his leadership and support he's given the trust over the last 3.5 years. before I go into anything. I think John has been a fabulous chair for us. He's taken us on a journey which has had its ups and downs over the last 3 years or 3.5 years for you, and certainly has had its challenges over that time as well, and came in at a very difficult time for the organisation when it was very much in the spotlight with the Digits clinical service at that time and what was being said about it and the transfer of its service. So I really want to thank John very much, and I'm sure you'll join me in thanking him for his leadership and support and challenge at the board over the last 3.5 years, and wish him well for the future. In terms of just thinking about how we've been,
Are you going to do that? All right.
I will do that.
Because at the moment we're in a different screen.
That's fine. I know where I am, I think. So just thinking about, so in terms of, for those of you who don't fully know the trust, who we are, we're a very small organisation. We came to life, I suppose, in 1920. The first patient was seen. We have about 800 staff, 34 services, and served 10,000, just over 10,000 service users in the last year. And we're training 1,400 students. Last year, we run 101 education training courses, and we're the only trust that is OFS registered delivering higher education courses in psychology, psychotherapy, and social work in the country. And we lead on 14 research studies at the moment. We also run a school which is Ofsted registered and was good rated and still remains good rated, I hasten to add, although it was not in 25-26, that's 25-26, that's this year, not last year, sorry, because I'm talking about the wrong year. So in terms of just thinking about some of our achievements over the last year from the annual report, so we did develop a new course. We continue to develop new courses within our training and education portfolio. One of those was co-created with the trauma service, looking at lived experience survivors, looking at child sexual abuse disclosure and how to support adult survivors of that. We were also one of the first trusts, indeed we were the first mental health trust to link through to the NHS app, and that's for our gender services. So digital has continued to be developing. We have an online portal for patients who are under our gender services, and continue to push through on that digital development for gender services. We developed new art therapy rooms as well to improve and increase the group spaces for art therapy across the organisation, and we were very pleased to see that St John's unit were awarded the Innovative Excellence Awards at the British Psychoanalytic Council Conference as well that year. We did celebrate 10 years of Thrive. So for those of you who don't know, Thrive is the underpinning of how CAM services are delivered. It is designed for delivery of CAM services. We continue to deliver in a Thrive model. We continue to advise countries as well as other services on how to develop and deliver services using the Thrive framework, and to improve services, mental health services across the UK. I hasten to add that we are also benchmarked as one of the best providers for CAMs in terms of access and speed of access to our CAM services, and some of the outcomes we deliver for our CAMs population as well in Camden. We're very pleased to see Margaret Ruston had her book, Finding a Way to the Child, translated into Mandarin and published in China. So congratulations to Margaret. She's an honorary consultant here. Our waiting room website, which is for NCL and serves for CAMS population, was shortlisted for improving mental health through digital category at the HSJ Digital Awards as well. And it's a very good website that's being used to support children who are waiting to see CAMS professionals across the whole of NCL, that is run from Tavistock and Portman. And last but certainly not least, Chantel Thomas won the prestigious Social Justice Advocate Award at the Social Work of the Year Awards as well. She is our course lead for Social Work MA here. So very well done to Chantel for that. In terms of some of the things we've done for our patients as well, so we've launched a new patient experience service questionnaire in the last year to help develop and improve our services. We're very clear that one of the bits we've been focusing on over the last year is how to improve both the collection of data in relation to patient experience, but also in relation to outcomes. And it was very pleasing to see that over the last year, we are, of providers, one of the best providers in terms of data quality, through the NHS in terms of our return and the collection of data for our patients across services, which is very good to hear. Outcomes, of course, underpin our work, and so the collection of data is absolutely important for our patients to show the benefit we deliver to all our patients. We've also been continuing to deliver the PISA framework, which is a new patient safety framework, and that's been adapted and delivered within and implemented across the trust, and changing how we basically investigate incidents, but also have embedded patients within the processes and who advise and look at incidents that are happening within the organisation. As I said, new online portal is there for our gender patients too. In terms of students, I know Paul is going to talk more about students a bit later on, but recruitment has held steady. And in fact, if you look across the sector, there's been a very strong downward trend in terms of recruitment. We've done very well to hold steady in terms of recruitment. Learning and teaching continues to be well reviewed with an overall satisfaction of 82%, which is very good within the sector. We have 94% of student survey respondents who find their course intellectually stimulating, which again is very strong. Oh, sorry, I haven't changed it. Thank you. And our doctoral research student satisfaction has risen significantly in several key areas too. So we continue to drive and continue to improve our education services and continue to be focused on that as well. For our staff, we are very focused on trying to improve staff satisfaction. We're very aware that when both John and I arrived, staff satisfaction was very poor. In fact, we were bottom in terms of the staff survey, and over the last 3 years, we've continued to improve year on year, last year being the most improved trust in the country for staff satisfaction. We got a response rate of 55%, which was great to see. We know there's a lot of work still to do, but we've improved in 7 of the 9 people promise areas as well over that time, and continue to make an effort to continue to support our staff who have been through a lot of challenges over the last 2 to 3 years and continue to be quite anxious about the future for the organisation. So making sure we continue to support them over the coming months as well. And real focus to improve staff satisfaction is there for us in our strategy too. Finally, I want to talk about that we celebrated 30 years of Tavistock Consulting. So Tavistock Consulting, oh no, I did do it. Sorry. Yeah. Apologies. Tavistock Consulting is our specialist organisational development and change consultancy. It works across a number of areas, both in the NHS, but also private sector too, and law and third sector as well. It's very widely respected. It leads into training courses as well that they deliver through our DET portfolio. And we had a celebratory event to mark the 30 years since Tavistock Consulting's opening that was delivered by both some of the staff who developed it in the first instance and set it up, but also some of those people who have benefited from its services over time. It was very well attended. So that is a quick run through of some of the highlights, I'd say, of what's happened over that last year. Looking forward to this year, we continue to focus on improving self-satisfaction, but I'll leave that and some of the plan around the strategy that I know Claire's going to be talking about in her piece of the presentation. But I think handing over to John, who's going to talk about our financial performance.
Thanks very much. So John Bell is our Chief Finance Officer, joined us very recently and has probably done a year's worth of work in 3 months.
5.5 now.
Is it?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming along in the evening. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, actually I can't see the slides on here. Let me just get them up on my screen. Our financial performance last year. So we're looking at the year that ended on the 31st of March earlier this year, 2025. If I just, is that one? It is that one. Good. Okay. So just in terms of key headlines. So first of all, we delivered a deficit at the end of the year to the end of March of just under £2.2 million. Now we were allowed to deliver a deficit, so we set a plan for that. We set a plan actually to deliver a deficit of £2.2 million. So we came in slightly ahead of that. So that's good. So although it's a deficit, it was good because we hit our target. We spent around 2.7 million on capital last year. So again, that we had a target to hit for that, and we hit that target. And that was roughly split around we spent about 1.7 of that on IT, improving things like infrastructure and some of the services that we offer around IT. And then also the other million was on estates and improving both work around improving our the space that we have, but also some quite critical areas of just making sure that the building functions, like water and pipe work was a particular area. Our auditors, when we do the accounts, the auditors have to do a quite intensive review of that. They are required to look at our accounts and see whether they effectively give a true and fair view of our financial position. So there's quite a lot of intense work that goes into that over the sort of the 2 or 3 months after the year end. And they gave us what is called an unqualified opinion. So effectively, they said that the accounts are do give a true and fair view of the organisation. However, they also have to look at value for money, and I think that's where we struggle. So you'll see, as an organisation of the size we are, it's very difficult to demonstrate value for money. So that's a particular issue, which I'll come on to a little bit later on as well. So just some numbers, which, apologies, I was trying to make them interesting, but it's hard to. So what we've got on the slide here really is how we've performed over the last 2 years, including the year we've just done. So you can see how what changes have happened there. So again, we had a deficit in 23-24 and a deficit in 24-25. In both those years, we hit the plan. You'll see, and you can see that actually, particularly on the graph on your right, that actually our income has been going down year on year, and that's one of the challenges we face. So that's a particular issue for the organisation. In terms of expenditure, I'll come on to a couple of slides in a minute, but I think the other thing to say on this slide is that we've got a very challenging plan for this year as well, which you can see there, which is actually that we've set a plan to break even, which is common across the NHS. So there was a big push for organisations to plan on break even. So we've got a very challenging plan behind that, and I'll come on to that a bit later on as well. So this was just looking at how effectively what our income and what it's for, where it comes from. So you've got a fair big chunk. The bits that are slightly exploded here, those 3 pies that are exploded there, are all to do with our clinical services that we provide, of which a very large chunk, nearly 50%, comes from ICBs and from the NHSE. And then there's a little bit, around 4% of our total income comes from local authorities, and then various other bits and pieces that we get paid for clinical income. You can then see that the light blue one is our large education income that we receive. So at 30%, or just under 30% of our income comes for the educational services that we provide. Last year, we had a particular benefit around a rates rebate, which is the purple one, and then there's other bits and pieces of income that we receive as well. But that gives you a sense of the 70 million that we received for last year. That's sort of what it was for and where it came from. In terms of how we spent it, that's the next slide. The vast majority of our expenditure goes on pay. So 75% of our expenditure goes on pay. That's actually a higher percentage than nationally. I think nationally it's around about 68, 69%. But we are a very people-focused organisation, and we don't have a lot of capital, for example. We don't spend things like money on drugs and medical equipment and all the kind of things that is quite common in, particularly in the acute sector. So 75% of our costs are on pay, and then the rest is split between the largest other chunk is around our premises, the building that we're in here, and then there's various bits and pieces of other expenditure. There's a small amount in there, around 3 million, that says education and training. That's not what we spend on education and training in totality, because a lot of what we do is staff, so it sits within the 75% of staffing. That's the non-pay element of what we do around training and education. Then I just need to move on to, if I move that, so cash. I'm doing 2 sets of slides, it's quite difficult. So cash flow is an issue for this organisation, has been and will continue to be for a while. And obviously part of the merger is how we get that kind of support for the cash requirements of the organisation. So although we ended the year with about 4.6 million in cash, which actually looked pretty good because it started off at around 2.4 million at the beginning of the year, we did require quite a bit of additional cash support. So effectively, it's more than a loan because we don't have to pay it back, but nonetheless, we were given additional cash, and that was 7.2 million during the year. So we needed that money in order to be able to continue paying our bills. But one of the consequences of our cash performance is what is around the Better Payment Practice Code. So this is where we are required to pay 95% of our invoices within 30 days. And you'll see on the two graphs there that it's measured in two ways. One is about the number of invoices you pay, and one is about the value, the total value of the invoices. And the dark blue line shows where we were the year before, and the orange line shows where we were the year that's just finished. And you can see in all cases that it's dropped. And that's a consequence of the challenges that we have around cash. We struggle to pay things as fast as we should because we don't have the cash to pay it, and we end up that ends up getting pushed out further. So that's a particular challenge, and one which we're facing this year at the moment. We're in the process of again seeking cash support. We've received 2 tranches of cash support so far, and we're waiting for confirmation of another one for November. So that so cash is a particular issue that I just wanted to highlight. So my last slide is just to talk a little bit about the outlook for, it talks about 25-26, but clearly we're halfway through that now, but nonetheless, it's still relevant. As I said before, we submitted a break-even plan for this year, but it's got some very big challenges in it, not least the fact that we have to reduce our costs by about 6% as part of our cost improvement program. And there are some other things in there, like we're looking at a land sale, that are all part of trying to hit that break-even plan, but it is very challenging. One of the big issues that has happened is that we've been getting around 5.2 million a year from NHSE for the national training contract, and that is going to end. So that is being phased out over a period of time. So that's again is another big hit for the organisation in terms of the loss of that income. We will be continuing to invest in our estate and IT. So again, we'll be another 2.8 million is in our plan this year. A little bit more in estate this year than in IT. But nonetheless, that's a reasonable size of investment actually for this type of organisation. So it's pretty good actually. As I've said before, cash is a real challenge. We were seeking about 4.2 million in cash this year, of which we've received around about 2.1, about half of that so far, and the rest is to come in November. And given all the issues I've been talking about, our reduction in income, the challenges on cash, the value for money issue around the size of our organisation in particular, the long-term sustainability of our clinical and educational services really sits within, it's the merger. That's how that's going to be addressed on the long term, being part of a bigger organisation, making it much easier to manage financial risks and giving us that kind of the security of those services as we move forward. And that's with North London Foundation Trust. That was
Thank you very much.
what I was going to say.
Thank you. We'll just keep going if that's okay, because there's lots of chance at the end for questions about anything that you've heard or you want to ask. So the next item is related to the merger, really, because we're aiming with colleagues from North London to merge with them on the 1st of April next year. But we have a number of governor positions where their terms of office are due to end, I think, Dorothy, it's in December, I think.
In December, end of December.
And so what we're proposing, and we're required in our constitution to ask the annual members meeting to vote on it, is to look to make some extensions to those terms. So I'll hand over to Dorothy to explain the process.
Okay. I'll start by saying good evening. Good evening. It's lovely to see everyone here today at what I think might be, and is likely to be, our last annual members meeting. So I feel really honoured to be here today. And I'll just go through this very quickly now. So we've got the Council of Governors. We have terms of office coming to an end in December, as John has just said. We've got 4 governors whose terms of office come to an end in December. But as a council, we have agreed to bring forward 2 names, two public governors today, who we wish to extend their terms to enable the council to be properly constituted till the merger by acquisition. Currently, we have 16 governors in council, so that means if 4 drop off, we would have 12. So we're asking members, and I think everyone in the room is a member.
Yep.
So we're asking members today to, by show of hands, that you agree the proposal to extend till the merger by acquisition to public governors to the end of the time of trust. So
And they are?
They are Sebastian Kramer, who is in the room here, and Stephen Frosch, who is also in the room.
Sebastian's not here.
Oh,
Sebastian, I don't know.
so it's not here.
Sebastian's
So-
on.
It's online. Yeah.
Is
no,
he
so
online?
not, no, he's not. Sorry, he's
He
not here. I
gave-
thought
he
he was
gave
here.
us apologies.
Yes, sorry.
So
Sebastian Frosch, sorry. Sebastian Kramer and Stephen Frosch.
if colleagues are wondering why it's only two, it's because the other two governors have been not good at attending meetings. So we thought it was probably not necessarily a huge advantage to extend those terms because they've made very few meetings. So that's the rationale, no other reason than that. So because it's, as Dorothy said, in the Constitution, we actually need you to put your hands up and say whether you are supportive. So are people supportive of us extending those two governors until either 31st of March or whenever the meeting transacts?
And those online as well, if
Yeah.
you can
If you could just put your
hands up, I think that would be helpful.
electronic hands up, that would be helpful.
I can see hands up. Thank you very much.
Does anybody wish to register opposition to that? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dorothy. So I'll hand over to Kathy then. So as I said at the start, Kathy's been with us a number of years. She was involved in the recruitment of myself and virtually all of our non-executives, along with a number of governor colleagues. So for those that are not familiar with the way that NHS Foundation Trust work, the chair and the non-executive directors on the board are all appointed by the governors. So Council of Governors in the NHS have a small but very important set of responsibilities, and that's one of them, to appoint the chair and indeed remove the chair if necessary and appoint the non-execs similarly, and also to agree to the appointment of the chief exec, even though that's an appointment being made by the board. So Kathy's been through all of that with us over the last 4 and a bit years, so I'll hand over to her.
No, and a special time for me to say a few words at this, what will be the last annual members meeting for us. So first of all, and I'll look people in the eye sometimes, my thanks to the governors and to everyone who has supported them, which is just about everybody in the room, and I don't know about online, for their contributions in the last year. We've said goodbye to some members of the council, some are here today, which is great, and welcomed others to the council. The governor role is a unique governance role done by volunteers. I think there's quite a bit of confusion about whether we're paid or not, or how we come to be or what we do, but we're volunteers. And for me, the core of the role is holding the board to account, asking the questions that an interested member of the public might ask. And I've gone from being a bit of a skeptic about this governance role to one where I really have grown to respect it, in terms of when boards, whether it's execs or non-execs or other staff, know that you're interested and learning about the services and care about what happens to students or patients or carers, how much they appreciate that and how good that process has been. It's adding for me a layer of public scrutiny to the work of the NHS. And I won't talk about it tonight. Let's see, that's when I want, I shouldn't be doing this. There's everybody. Yeah, there's the mugshots of all of us. Mine's particularly odd, but I was just out of chemotherapy at the time, so we'll forgive that one. In the slides that'll be circulated after the presentation, there is more information about the role of governors, and also on the website there's the information about each of us as individuals, and every individual has brought expertise, experience, both in their professional lives and in their lived lives to these roles. And in the last year, we've settled into new ways of working, which we've developed, I think it would be fair to say, under John's leadership. The Council of Governors was a very, very different beast when he came to my first meetings 5 years ago. I think Michael Ruston might be the only one in the room who had experienced those Council of Governor meetings, maybe a few others. But under John's leadership, there really has been a strengthening, and I think of our influence and our effectiveness as a Council of Governors. And in the last year, the highlights for me have been, the first has been a new program of service visits, which we did with non-executive directors. Secondly, there was governor observers on board committees. And this has enabled governors to understand more deeply how each of the non-executive directors are scrutinizing and supporting specific areas of governance. We can't really see that at formal board meetings and trust it and understand it and support it, but we can as observers of the committees. I'm an observer of the Quality and Safety Committee, which is chaired by Claire, and Sabrina and Janusz have also been members of that committee. And over the past year, the committee, I believe, has matured, challenging and supporting and learning together. And thanks to all sorts of hard work, including Michael and other Claire, as I call her, with measurable improvements to patients and students, to get to the point where it isn't just policies that are sort of implemented in some parallel universe, to something where we know we're learning together, have implemented change, and we can demonstrate to our stakeholders and patients and ourselves that it's made a difference. And Janusz, Claire, Sabrina, others, I hope you feel that having as an observer and us knowing more has been a good thing. I've also valued learning from the issues and questions that fellow governors who are on other committees are bringing back to the Council of Governors, whether it's Paru on POD at the moment, or Stephen in Education and Training, and others, to feel the depth of their questions and to learn from that has been really, really valuable. This year, we spent time understanding and providing development opportunities for governors. We worked really quite closely with NHS providers, so we weren't wasting precious resources of this organisation. I won't go through all the details, but happy to answer any questions. I've done a number of the programs, as I know other governors have, and they've been incredibly helpful. We've also attended informal sessions when governors can ask questions or discuss issues which there may not be time for, or indeed it may not be appropriate at more formal meetings. And we've done about 2 of those a month. They dial in if people can, and they've been incredibly valuable so that we can be in a safe space to ask questions and understand more deeply. And we've also attended joint workshops between the governors and the non-executive directors, which have really focused on listening and building relationships. And my understanding from the experts who've done evaluations about Council of Governors is that building of relationships, that building of learning and understanding has been the most powerful indicator of whether the Council of Governors was really adding value and being effective. As volunteers, getting the basics done matters. The regular newsletters, the meetings in diaries early. You all do this, or many of you do it, 12 plus hours a day. For governors as volunteers, we might not see anything for weeks at a time, maybe even a month. And to stay connected, to know that you're in the right place at the right time, incredibly important. And that wasn't there 4 years ago when I started at all. So to thank you to Dorothy and those working with you, and to the communications team, look at colleagues. It really matters. And thank you for doing it effectively in this past year when there's been so many other pressures of changes in staff and leadership and the demands on everyone in the organization. The specific roles of governors, which are on that slide that I talked about earlier, such as the nomination committee, the appraisal of the chair, and the statement on quality and safety, have all been delivered and supported. Now, at this point, I might end what I was going to say as a review of the year, but John asked if I would say a few words about about the merger and the futures as well. And there's a big but. It's not just been an improving and business as usual type of year as we work towards a merger. It isn't for the governors, it isn't for anybody in the organization. I think as a member who's not so involved, that must be hard to understand because we are closer to it. Governors have brought their experience and expertise, and that's both professional and personal, about organizational change to their roles. Our role in the merger is to be assured that there has been a well-run process to achieve the merger. As with many things in the NHS and in governance, what does well-run mean is at the heart of some of this. There has been much to learn. The NHS processes to achieve a merger by acquisition are not simple. And there have been bumps in the road. The late decision, and thank you for referring to it, John, the late decision about the NHSE education and training contract is having many implications that are exercising us as governors. As lead governor, I'm pleased to report that we've ensured that changes to the leadership of the trust have been implemented. And my thanks to members of the nominations committee who have scrutinized and supported these changes. They've been important in my view that we had the leadership in place to be able to do our best through these through this period of time. It was interesting in the survey this year to members, one of the things that came back that Rhiannon highlighted in her very good summary was people didn't understand what the nominations committee did. And so it felt very important today to say how much I valued it, because it has been part of ensuring that the leadership in the trust is coping with change, even though I know the workloads that means for some individuals are great. We've been assured that the board is fully engaged in the merger process. We've been briefed on changes in context and risks, as well as updated on key milestones and benefits. And there have been many opportunities for informal discussions and questions. We've been part of considering and agreeing what is important to prioritize. So like I know the whole organization is doing, as governors, we've done some. So there are many things we'd love to be doing now. We'd love to be developing this or that or going forward, doing it better. But that's not what we believe is important at this stage. And it's been great to see that as we prioritize, to see the improvements in services, despite all the challenges that the trust and the staff are faced with. Going forward, because there are months ahead till we hopefully will be in a position that the merger by acquisition will be successful. We will be involved as a revised constitution to reflect both organizations is developed, and that process starts next week, working with North London Foundation Trust. And we've been assured, we trust, that there is a continuing commitment to transparency and engagement between governors and the board. And I look at Arona at this stage knowing we've had that conversation and that commitment to working in the ways that we always have worked with John will continue. So fine, and that actually is the one thing I've been challenged on. Is there a transparent process? Are we being listened to? Do we know the risks as well as the benefits? And I certainly believe, I hope other governors do, that we really have had an involvement in the trust where we can say that is the case, and it will continue. Finally, my thanks again to members, governors and staff who've contributed to sustaining and strengthening the work of the trust over the past year. Michael has given thanks on behalf of all of us, John. It's been a privilege to have been part of both appointing you and working with you and learning from you. I think there's times that old hands like me who've been through 10 reorganizations might be a bit cynical, and you have always, you have given me a determination to do work in a way that I am proud of in the NHS in this volunteer role that I've agreed to do. And I've actually accepted my next one. So you're leaving me even positively looking forward. And I look forward to working with all of you as we contribute to change in both this trust, but also the NHS as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Cathy. So we've just got a couple more presentations to. The next item on the agenda is about this year primarily, and that was going to be a joint presentation by Rod Booth, our Director of Strategy and Business Development, and Claire, our Chief Nurse and Chief Operating Officer. Unfortunately, Rod's not too well, so Claire's got the pleasure of doing both bits. It feels a bit like your job generally, Claire, doesn't it? We give you a job and then we give you another one.
That's generally what happens with a nurse. Sabrina and I were talking about that earlier.
No, and what I was referring to in terms of workload.
I'm just looking for Paul. Paul, do you want to come up and join as well? We do
Sorry.
Is there enough space?
business and training. Yeah, I'll just put
Do
another
you
chair.
want me
here.
to go down?
Yeah, there's no.
So this is more about the
Have
current
you got enough room there? Say if you
How do we get the slides up?
want me to sit on John's knee.
year.
Steady.
Oh, shall I get mine up?
You want on the on screen? Pass that.
Yeah.
See it. Thank you.
Is that them?
It's the first time I've been able
Okay.
to read the slides, so this is good.
So we'll just find the slide that we're at the moment. So we're just on our strategy. So this strategy we launched, actually, when did we launch it? I'm just trying to think.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So we're continuing with the same strategic pillars, and we did make a decision that that was important to do that because obviously going into the merger by acquisition, but we've made quite a lot of momentum across the work that we've been doing. So we thought that it was really important that we do that. Let me just, like John, I'll be doing 2 sets of slides again. Okay, so these slides are different to the ones up here. Yeah. Thank you. That's right. Okay, so a little flip there. Just, I think we've got a bit of version control issue here. So focus for 25-26, thinking about clearly our partnerships and innovation across the system, but also nationally as well for some of our services. Really big focus on people and with a particular emphasis that we've been working on this year on our equalities, diversity and inclusion, refining everything that we do down to 3 key areas, and those 3 priorities are the ones that we've taken forward across the organisation. Waiting times, and I'll talk about that a bit further in a moment, with particular focus on our gender services and autism. Experience and outcomes, Michael talked about that before in terms of our new surveys and questionnaires, but we've been doing a lot of work in recording our outcomes and improving that. Education and training, and Paul will come on to that shortly, and then clearly the merger, which we've been talking about a lot tonight. So, working with partners, this is about delivering the 10-year plan, the NHS 10-year plan. We've done some really key work in Camden around a prevention centre. We've also been working very closely with in NCL, but with our partners, thinking about the CAMS, or the Children and Young Persons Collaborative. And we've also been utilising the NHS app, and that through the Doctor portal particularly, that Michael talked about previously, that has been launched in our gender services. And that isn't just a portal that will help us in terms of appointments, but it will really help the people that access our services to have much more control over when they attend, who they meet with, and communicate with us much better. So that's a big part of the work that we do. And then the Camden all age trauma pathway that we're working very closely with North London Foundation Trust on. I don't know what happens with this slide, but there's a lot of problems moving it on.
And you
Oh,
had-
it's the same. Oh, sorry, I'm doing two things. Well, it's the one that's sharing. Thanks,
Claire, would you like me to hold that one?
I think what I was doing was trying to move it
I
on there
know.
and trying to move
John
to
did
one,
the
and now
same
I've
thing.
realised it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
We're so
Okay.
slick, aren't we? It's just unbelievable how slick we've become, isn't it, really?
We didn't need those 10 dress rehearsals.
Well, we offer to help each other.
Yeah. So delivering quality improvement, and interestingly, we know that there's a lot of work happening, but we don't actually necessarily see it all in one place. So at Quality and Safety Committee last week, we did receive a whole summary paper of everything that's happening. It was really good to see. So we've done a lot of work around enhancing
Absolutely.
clinical services, by reducing the waits, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll talk about the individual services, enhancing our education and training, and enhancing staff experience. And all of that continues, even though we're moving towards the merger. The momentum that's happened in the trust and the pace has been really positive to see. And then enhancing service sustainability. So that's been a really big part of our efficiency plans, and our planning as well. So celebrating our staff achievements in June this year, we had our first staff achievements awards, and they were really based on our values and living our values. It was fantastic in terms of the, I suppose, the sort of the amount of enthusiasm that there was around it, and the amount of staff that were recognised in those awards. And let me just move on, which really did embed the work that we've been doing around our values and behaviours. So we did a huge piece of work with all of our staff to put our values into practice. So not just talking about the values, but really showing and displaying how we do it. You can see some of the cards there that we've been giving out to people, and colleagues have really got on board with that. I think it's over to you for this section, Paul.
Good evening. In case anyone doesn't know me, I'm Paul Dugmore, the Director of Education for Learning and Teaching. So just to say a few things from an education and training perspective over the recent months. So last year we were pleased to congratulate 425 students who graduated with one of our academic awards from both the University of Essex and the University of East London. Many of whom came to our graduation ceremony at the Queen Mary University of London in September, including our two honorary doctorates for this year, Tim Dartington and Ghislaine Kinuani. We were also pleased to continue our partnership with the Tavistock and Portman charity to support 8 students on 4 of our introductory courses, where we have awarded bursaries, 50% of the fees, and mentoring for students from global majority backgrounds to widen access, not just to child psychotherapy training, but other trainings as well. And that's the 4th year that we've been running that programme, which has been really positively evaluated by the recipients. Last year, we were able to provide short course provision to over 3,800 learners on one of our short courses, 70% of whom are domiciled outside of London, emphasising the national profile of our education and training. And we are exploring the opportunity of the merger to explore the increase of clinical placements within the new organisation. So Rachel James, our clinical director, and myself met with the NLFT Director of Psychological Professions and Head of Education and Training just yesterday and last month to start planning for the next academic year so that we can increase both the number of and the diversity of placements for our trainees in the next academic year, which is really exciting. And within DET, Education and Training, and this trust, of course, we're really committed to protecting the Tavistock brand, identity and name, particularly in relation to education and training and our global reach. And we're really encouraged and pleased that our colleagues at NLFT are of the same view, and I'm sure Nina may say something more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to use or talk about a couple of national frameworks now and the work that we've been doing. And apologies, there are acronyms in these, but I'm going to use the proper, we didn't come up with these were national ones. So the patient safety instant response framework, and this is something that sits under me, and we've been really, we've fully embedded it now, I would say, in terms of the implementation phase, but actually there's always improvement work that can be done. So we have worked very closely with people who've got lived experience of our services to understand what this actually means for our trust and the type of services we have, because it isn't necessarily typical to other mental health trusts or other acute trusts, and so there's something that we've had to really think about. One of the areas we've really focused on is compassionate engagement, and a number of staff, quite a large number of staff, have had that training, have been really positive about it, as well as our patient safety partners. We've used the lived experience to really think about how we can learn as well from incidents and themes. So we've identified themes across the organisation and how we make improvements from them. And then moving on to the next acronym, which is the Patient Carer Race Equality Framework. We've used a similar approach actually with lived experience, and we've really focused on how people access our services. And we did identify that at some services there probably were barriers, and some of those barriers may have been either unintended that we had created in terms of how people are referred and access the services, but also from a sort of knowledge and education and understanding perspective, either from GPs or referrers or from people who need to access services themselves. And we've done quite a significant amount of work at local level in teams to really improve access for people. The next area of improvement is around Gloucester House, our school, which Michael mentioned previously. So over the last year, during 24-25 and continuing into this year, we've done a huge amount of improvement work with the school to really focus on the education and the therapy model there. And actually they were inspected in July. We were expecting it the autumn time. They came before we were expecting, which was actually a pleasant surprise because we were ready. We knew we were ready, and because of the amount of work that they had been doing. And we had a good rating across all areas, which was really positive. And the staff are absolutely, they're so chuffed with that because they've been doing so much work and it's really good. What they did highlight was the calm and respectful atmosphere, which I think was good. And they also talked about the really positive leadership and responsiveness in the service. A huge amount of work has been happening in our adult gender services, and you'll probably be aware that there was a national review. Our review happened in November of last year. We'd already been doing some targeted support work there, and that had set us up really well for the review in terms of the data and the information that we had. But since then, there has been a National Quality Improvement Collaborative. We've been part of that collaborative, and there are some really key aims there, but effectively it is around improving services and the experience for patients that access the services, reducing variation. There's a huge focus on productivity and activity and thinking about waiting lists. You'll probably be aware that there will be a publication of the review very shortly, and there'll be some national recommendations, and we're looking forward to that to be continuing to work with the other services and NHS England as part of a system to make sure that we have a really good offer for the community. And then the final one is around our autism services. So we have some really good work that happened across, particularly in North Central London, from the work that's been happening over 24-25 and continues now. We've managed to reduce the waiting times for first appointments from 33 weeks to 7 weeks, and we continue with an ongoing reduction in the waiting time between assessments and outcomes. There's also, we're increasing the number of patients that we've been seeing by streamlining some of the services, but we did receive additional funding as well, which we've managed to use for a recovery funding to really increase the number of assessments that we do. There is a huge, you will know nationally, there's a huge demand on the services, and so challenging, this continues to be a challenge, but there is some really good improvement work. And the key bit that they're doing now to focus on service user experience and outcomes is think about how they can streamline the assessments further and reduce the number of separate appointments and times that people come in for assessments. We've had some really good feedback from people about how life-changing the service has been and how they can see a way forward as well. Okay, so I think it's...
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nearly there, and then please have questions and comments for us. So just like to welcome Lena. Really appreciate it for making the time to come. Presumably, Lena, this means you've had 2 AMMs already.
I have, yes.
So Lena's chair at North London, but also chair of an ICB on the South Coast, and has just been through a merger literally only a year ago, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When
yeah.
Camden, Islington and Barnet and Harrogate came together. So I think it was just an opportunity for Lynn to say a few words and just to put face to names.
Absolutely, and thank you all very much. And it's been nice to have a chat to a few of you ahead of time. I thought I'd say a little bit about me and then a little bit about North London Foundation Trust. And I know this is a very strange time in this organisation's being to be here today. But one of the things I do know, and because I grew up in Camden, so I've known this organisation for a good few decades. I'm not going to say exactly how many because I'm not going to reveal any ages, but for a long time I've known this organisation. I've known it because it's had an excellent and outstanding reputation, and not just locally in Camden, but of course further afield. So it's quite a degree of pride actually that I'm sitting here and feeling both welcomed and pleased that North London Foundation Trust was invited to consider this merger. But before I go a little bit into that, I'll say a bit about me. So my first job actually was in Holloway Prison, and I was working in the education department, working with women who I learned very quickly that all of them had been traumatized, and their trauma had led them to making some unsound and quite often unsavory choices, which had caused them to be in that situation. And my job at that time was to coach them, mentor them, help them to make the transition from institutional life back into a community setting, and to help them try and get their life on a different footing. So working with people who are vulnerable and who are on the margins of society actually has been the core DNA for me. And so I went on to stay in education. I ran a small training centre for youngsters who were at risk of exclusion, taking them out from those environments where they didn't have any work ethic with their families into actually getting them work experiences. In majority of them were in Shell because we were based in Covent Garden at the time. But I did have a very valuable experience there. I did a turnaround of what was an educational charity, and we were told it wasn't going to survive unless somebody could come up with a rescue plan. And I must have been about 25 and thought, I can do that. I've seen the spreadsheet, I'm going to have a go. And so they gave me the keys to get on with it and to do it. And I moved to the South Coast because the education officer at Holloway had a boat on the South Coast and said, you've got to come to the South Coast. And I went on the boat and I thought, I love North London, but I want to learn how to sail. So that's how I ended up down south. But down south,
This is down south to some of us.
down. Of course, it is. I forgot about further down south, John. Looking out across the Solent. And there, I was asked to join the board of Southampton City College, and rapidly learned that what was going to be a financially positive outturn, they were actually going straight into special measures. And the board was giving a choice. I was only 4 months in. The board was given a choice. You can stay or you can go. And I thought, I can't abandon this place. I've only been here a couple of months. And actually, it was me asking questions about the finances as a young person, saying, things don't quite stack up here. I'm not a finance person, but it doesn't look right. So I ended up then chairing that organisation, taking it through a financial turnaround, getting it 30 million worth of investment to rehabilitate what was a very tired Victorian estate and put it onto its current footing, and it's still going. And just staying with the education theme, two things. I was a board member of university, Solent University, which is all about access for people who wouldn't normally get to university. And then I run a little business which I've been doing whilst doing my NHS roles, which has been about delivering leadership training for people in the public sector globally, on protecting vulnerable victims and witnesses within the criminal justice system. We've done that for UN Women and UNICEF, National Crime Agency, and British High Commissions around the world. So that's my education bit, and it's something that obviously I still dabble a bit in, but isn't the key element of what I'm doing today, because I am pretty much full-time NHS. I've been chair of an ambulance service covering the majority of the southeast of England, a NED on an acute hospital, and joining North London Foundation Trust, and also chairing an integrated care board, so both a commissioner and a provider. And it's really good to be doing that because you get to see things from both ends of the telescope. And I was saying to somebody earlier, the problem is when you get into the NHS, you get the bug and you just don't want to leave because you really become so embedded within it and quite passionate about patient outcomes. So North London, as I said, was invited to get on board. And I do want to say a couple of things about how we recognise it's not the place that perhaps any organisation wants to be in, but it is a good opportunity to preserve, in a sense, the crown jewels of this organisation, to preserve its identity, and we absolutely want to do that. We've talked about the branding, maybe being something like Tavistock and Portman at NLFT. We know it's got an international reputation and we want to preserve that, and it's important that we do because it's part of its unique selling point and it gives credibility, authenticity and power to those really valuable services that the organisation runs. And when you're small, it isn't always possible to be sustainable, and that's just sadly the truth. We know that the NHS at the moment, it's very changeable, very dynamic. Everybody's getting less and less and less money. So sometimes we do have to join forces, and that's pretty much what's been happening in the NHS of late. Lots of organisations have been merging. You would have been seeing it, but it doesn't mean to say the core of what's good about those organisations should be diluted. And that's really what I wanted to come and confirm today, that we want to support all that's really good, try and create sustainable services and give it durability, longevity, and there'll be a lot of co-learning. You know, there'll be some great things that you're doing that we will need to learn, and we want to capitalise on that, and there'll be stuff that we can do that bit of knowledge exchange as well. I think having done the merger of, 5 boroughs last year, just launching in actual fact our target operating model on the 1st of November, in a few days. These things take time. It's an evolution, and it takes a lot of work in terms of getting this developed and embedded, taking staff with us and winning hearts and minds. That all takes time. But I think, I recognise that we deliver the care that we deliver for people, we deliver it through people. And so it's important that we continue to value people and give them the right kind of environment within which to thrive. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So that's the presentation. Just to remind you what we've covered, we've talked about the annual report, highlights, achievements, performance, etc. from Michael. We've talked about our annual accounts and financial outlook from John. We've agreed an amendment to the Constitution to allow a couple of governors to have their terms extended until the merger. We've had Kathy's report about the role of governors and what they've been up to over the last few years. And I personally have to say that it's been really satisfying to see how, and I think chairs of committees would probably agree with this, that having a governor in observation and then giving feedback at the end of the meeting has actually helped raise our game in terms of the quality of the debate and the challenge. And what I really like about the board we have here is exec directors will say to Michael sometimes, I actually felt that the non-execs gave us a bit too easy a time. And that's incredibly mature to have executives saying that they wish they'd been challenged more, because that's not always been my experience in other organisations. So we talked about the League Governors report. Then Claire and Paul talked about 25-26 in particular. And then you've heard from Lena her vision for the future in terms of how we bring the two organisations together and what we can achieve. So questions, comments on any of that, both from the room and from online. So I don't know whether we'll be able to see any hands come up online. If we do, I'll go there first. Anybody online wishing to come in? If not, whilst you're thinking, I'll ask anybody in the room. want to come in and say. Michael.
If I could just make a comment about my experience as a governor. I've had 2 terms. The second one expired last December. And the situation basically was that the previous term was greatly damaged by the whole GIDS crisis, as long as you can imagine, and relationships are quite difficult, really. The second term, there were 4 of us on the governing body who had, each of us, at least 20 years experience of being staff members or ancillary members of the trust. And in my case, my wife's also been here for her entire career. And I guess we really were quite anxious about the merger when we heard about it. I think the truth of the matter is we'd rather it wasn't happening. But of course, we realised that it was happening. And the question was, what was our role going to be as governors, bearing in mind that the governing body is an advisory body, basically, with a few powers, but it's mainly an advisory body. And I think we decided that what we would try to do was to try to clarify what we thought was most important in regard to the identity and what people call the brand of the trust. What would need to happen in the merger? Bear in mind the merger was extremely uncertain because at one point there were 5 partners, and then there were, you know, we never expected that it would actually be your trust that was the one that we were going to be merging with, although from what you've said, I must say it's quite a good thing. Anyway, here we were in this uncertain situation, and our concern was how could we clarify what we thought would be the crucial issues for the trust to retain its identity and retain its capacities to develop and grow. And we, I suppose, were quite active in trying to formulate ideas and producing papers and all sorts, trying to clarify what we thought the crucial issues were for the identity of the trust. Now, I think it's true to say we also enjoyed a good relationship with the executive directors and the non-executive directors throughout. And I must say, John, the chair, I think was particularly committed to trying to ensure that we had a voice and that we were always heard. I never felt that we were silenced or brushed off, which hadn't been the case, I may say, in the previous period. Not for me personally, but for other governors. We had some contact with governors, with ex-staff members and others connected with the Tower Shop from outside. So we weren't entirely isolated in what we were trying to do. We made a decision that we were not going to take any of our concerns outside the trust, outside the membership, partly because we knew that the public domain activities which people had engaged in before had not done the trust any good at all. So we decided none of that. And we had this ongoing conversation. What, of course, I don't know, although what I've heard is reassuring, what I don't know is how far the kind of issues we raised and the concerns we had, how far they are going to be taking effect, as it were, in the next period of the trust in its merged situation. Of course, we obviously hope it will be. I mean, I say we, I think my colleagues probably would agree with me certainly on this. And I'm sure that I will certainly, and I think my colleagues too, will continue to take a very active interest and commitment to the trust in the hope that it continues in obviously a new and developed way, but in the same spirit that it's had actually for, as you know, 100 years.
That's really helpful, Michael, particularly for colleagues that have not been on the journey, if you like. Just to say, one thing that I could say for sure is that I've constantly pushed to say, stop just talking about all the positives, make sure we're thinking about what the risks are. And we've done that as part of the work around the business case that's very close to being finalised. And what we will do, Michael, you'll remember there's a formal role for governors. The governors will have the opportunity to vote on whether they feel the process that we've gone through has been robust and has taken account of concerns from the Council of Governors, and that will happen later. Obviously, Aruna will be in the chair, and I'll introduce colleagues to you, Aruna, later, but that will happen. But I would say that there has been a tendency in the NHS, and we've been a little bit guilty of it on some of the journey, to focus on all the positives about making something bigger. And Michael's been very keen, and so have I, to make sure that we don't forget that any change has risks to it. There's an interesting piece in the Health Service Journal, the RAG for NHS management today, saying that 40% of trusts have either a shared chair or a shared chief exec or both. But what it also says is 24 trusts used to have them and they don't now. So what you need to make sure you're doing is learning from why not, why did that not work there? And obviously the ultimate end for some of those models will be merger, for others it won't. But I would say, Michael, I've always genuinely felt that your heart was in the right place. You were trying to make sure that what we did that was different, and particularly what was unique, was sustained into the future. And I can reassure you that governors, since you've left us, have continued in that vein. So thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, so really two questions about education. In fact, one just for John and one for Lena, if I may. I mean, John, just firstly, I just wanted to check with you because in your slides you said 29% of the income of the trust was from training, education and training. Personally, I was surprised by that, and I thought we had a much higher proportion than that. We, in our general conversations, we've always talked about education and training providing about half the income of the trust. So I just wonder if you could comment on that discrepancy between our belief and your data. And I also wondered, just connected with that, I mean, I think there's a very different one to Lena, which is basically about how you see the at this point, I know in advance of final decisions, the integration of the education and training side of this trust into the large trust. Perhaps we could just deal with the factual stuff first.
So, so we spent about 21 million, or rather, we earned about 21 million for education last year. It's fair, and that was roughly 30% in the slide. Now, it's fair to say that there was one of the things I mentioned in the slide was that we had a large rebate for our rates last year. So if you strip that out, it would raise the percentage. But in none of the data I've seen would it get anywhere near half.
Right.
So I think
it's probably fair, John, that we have in the past just talked crudely about half. Not necessarily it was precisely that, but I think Stephen's right. That is a statement we have in the past made. But I'm getting.
I'd like to make about it. Just so thank you. That's really helpful. And of course, it might reduce given the cut of the central contract. But also, although I think it'd be almost impossible to work this out in numbers, we should also know the contribution that trainees make to the clinical work. So without that, we'd be spending more on clinical stuff or reducing the volume.
And I think that was some of where we talked about roughly a half. That was partly behind that story. Because we wouldn't have had those people if we weren't providing the education.
Thank you.
Lena, do you want to comment?
Yes, of course. So absolutely. So at the moment, we are looking at what can be described as a lift and shift. So we're not looking to change anything, at least in the first stage, because we know that we're going to have to go through a process of learning. And I know that we're working together to try and get to the detail of how things might work. So we're not going to make any radical changes immediately, but because we'll need to do that learning and we'll need to think about how we're going to create a sustainable footing. We'll have to look at the different services, the different courses, look and see whether we can power up some of them. So we're not thinking necessarily of not doing some initially, because we need to see what are the most beneficial ways of delivering some of those programs of education that are going to make them sustainable. So there will be a need for us to learn, to get underneath it, see what the courses are, what the educational arrangements look like. So that's what we're looking at.
Do you currently have a structure of education?
We do deliver some education, we do. And similarly, we rely on trainees to support our services. They're really, really important. And we want to continue doing that. It's important, you know, for longevity, for staff retention, getting clinical staff is really tough. It's really difficult, and retaining them is also really difficult. So it's quite important for us.
Thank you. Claire?
Thank you. For some of us, I think the most wonderful thing about what we anticipate and hope and believe will happen in terms of our merger through acquisition is that after 25 years, there will be, for the population of North London, a single mental health provider. And that, I think, is something that, well, I know will happen, and it's the right thing for our population, rather than having 3 organisations. We've already seen what the merger can bring in terms of Barnet and Coombe, Camden and Islington. One of the things that I know some of the senior staff, a couple of whom I spoke to again today about this, doesn't trouble them, but it's in their mind, is our services. And we heard Claire speak passionately about the quality of those particular services that we offer, some of which are quite niche. At their root, they use systemic theory and psychodynamic practice in the round in all of our services, so our crisis teams or our CMHTs for young people operate in that way. And I just wonder how we're going to be able to, preserve's the wrong word because it sounds atrophied, but to take the best of that clinical service model and not just have it ring fenced around our own services, but imbue that and infuse all of our colleagues to be able to practice differently and to take advantage of what we bring. And I'm not looking necessarily at Lena. I know this is something, Michael, that you've thought about, but I would be interested in some, not reassurance, but your views on how that might happen, how we can best support that.
Wants to start?
I don't mind chipping in. So I think it's a really, really important point, and I'm non-clinical. But one of the important things that we need to do is we need to look at what an aligned clinical strategy looks like. What are the underlying principles? And as I said before, we'll need to learn from each other. So I can't comment on the essence of what you've described from your area of expertise, but absolutely we'll have to look at aligning. What does clinical strategy look like going forward? What do we want services to look like? You are absolutely right about getting a single mental health provider. The CAM service, excellent. Really excited about getting involved, you know, and getting deeper into that. So there's a lot of really good stuff, and I think that's what I want to emphasize, the stuff that you guys do really well, we really love. We want to power it up. We want to make sure that it's sustainable, and we want it to, you know, be part of our combined reputation to say this is what we're all doing really well together. There will be some stuff that we'll trip over, that we'll go, you know what, it doesn't make sense for us to be doing that, and we'll have to work that through. But doing it on an informed basis and not just doing it just because, you know, we think we don't like the look of the colour of that thing, or we don't like the shape of that thing, or whatever. But yeah,
So we've
let's think deeper.
Michael,
Comment?
Yeah,
We've got a question online as well, so we'll come to that in a moment.
it was really say, I think, you know, it's a very important issue in terms of making sure that the staff feel empowered to bring the clinical model through and to work with the strategy that there is, the clinical strategy there is within NLFT. Some of the work that's done here has not actually been applied in some of the settings that there are within NLFT. So take inpatients. And there is a huge opportunity of trying to think, how do you apply systemic thinking into an inpatient environment? Some of the work going on nationally does do that. Actually, there's a huge opportunity to think about actually how do we bring that, and actually for the staff to be thinking, how do we play a role across a wider range of services that actually brings a benefit to a wider range of patients than it has done before. So I think there's a big opportunity there for an organisation to take this forward in a much larger way than it has done previously and play a larger role. If you think about shorts rounds, and you know, whether it be shorts rounds, whether it be ballot groups, in our history, that has come about from thinking how to apply some of that thinking into different areas. And so one would hope this gives an opportunity for a bit of that phoenix to come back, of thinking through actually what can we innovate in, because we now got access to different areas that we didn't have access, or places to work before, and easier to do.
Okay. I'll just take this one, Janusz, because it's the person's been asking. Sorry, I'm taking the one off
Sal
screen.
had her hand up too.
So the question is, do you think the trust is doing anything like enough for the 17,000 plus people waiting to be seen at the adult gender service? I note how little time is ever actually spent on discussing the issue at governor and board meetings that I have attended over the year, and in real and meaningful terms, what actions are actually being taken. I ask with the context that T&P have been found to be partially responsible for the death of at least one young woman by the coroner, and in its response to the Prevention of Future Deaths report, it stated that it would be introducing peer support worker roles, and that you believed it would have a significant impact on those waiting for care. I'm under the understanding that these roles have not come to fruition, and so I would ask what you are doing to prevent future tragic incidents moving forward, given that you are not implementing what you assured the coroner you would be doing 2 years ago. So I don't know, Claire, do you want anything to say on that? Because there's loads going on with it.
Yeah,
It'd be helpful just to give some reassurance that we are doing a lot.
Yeah, so we are doing a lot of work. There's been an improvement piece of work happening for the last year, and that now has moved into the national quality improvement piece of work. We meet regularly with our commissioners, NHS England, who are clearly moving or wanting to move towards a central national waiting list. And that will be happening, and gave us assurance within the next from April next year. And so at the moment we are just doing all we can to make sure that we have increased our activity, increased the number of appointments that we have, and also try to support people while they are on the waiting list. The majority of that is through, we don't have peer support workers, but we do have a service user forum, which is led by service users with lived experience, and so people are welcome to join that for support. And there are a number of forums and websites that are also on our trust website that we give that information to people on the waiting list, as well as the package that they get sent out. And that's at the moment a huge piece of work that's being done, hence the national work stream on it.
I just wonder, apologies, because I'm sort of abusing my position a little bit. It might be worth having a bit of an in-depth session at a public board, maybe, about what we are doing around JIC, to give a bit more in-depth understanding about what is going on. I mean, this sounds like a bit of an excuse, but one of the things we have always been challenged with, we receive referrals from all over the country, and we have been trying to get NHS England to understand that because of that, that's causing a lot of people from the London and surrounding area to be waiting even longer than they should be. But I can assure the questioner that we do actually have quite a lot of conversations about JIC, and if we've been failing to do so in public board meetings, that's clearly my fault as chair, so apologies for that. Anything to add, Michael, to what Claire said?
I mean, just to emphasise, I think this is it isn't just a team at Tavistock and Portland. This is very much a national problem, and so it is engaging very much with NHS in England on solving, because these are patients who have been let down nationally in terms of waiting too long for access to services. So it's about how we work with them, both in terms of the improvement programme we're instituting internally to improve access for those patients to access our services, but also how we improve access to the other 7 JICs around the country too, and allow patients to access all services fairly. So there's a huge amount of work I know going on nationally on this to try to improve the waits, because currently it is not good enough, the length of time people are waiting for access to these services wherever you are in the country.
And the questioner probably knows, because they're clearly very knowledgeable about it, the national review of all of the adult gender services, the report's imminent. It could even be out this week, but it will be out in the next day or so, and that will summarise all of the things that they found from visiting all of the trusts. And we have already received some feedback from them when they came and visited our service. And so some of the issues, most of the issues are to do with waiting times, but not all of them. But thank you very much indeed for the question. So Janusz, and then Sal, and then I've got 2 more hands.
Sabrina was before me.
Was she okay? Janusz first then?
Yeah, just it's a comment. So if I tend to think about the trust as an executive as, clinical is a triangle at the bottom, then education, then research. If you think about the impact you have as a clinician, you have an impact with the patient, person in front of you, so that's at that level. Education, you have a greater impact with people in the classroom or you're teaching in that course. With research, you have a logarithmic increase of research, and it's just really a comment, and I know I've discussed it with Lena in the past, is that one of the things that are really unique is what we do clinically. Even more unique is what we do in education. But at the pinnacle of that, over the last 100 years, is unique research that's been done. And it'd be nice not just to see that preserved, but expanded with other partners. So it's just a plea, and it's glass half full, not glass half empty.
And I completely support that. Absolutely. You need to be doing your research and excelling at the research in order to be at the forefront of, evolving the services. So absolutely.
And I know you feel that. So it's just
Sabrina?
Mine was just maybe a comment and a question, but not needing to be answered. But it was around the Tavistock consultancy, because I disclosure I work at CNWL, and I see the impact of that work, especially with our 21 CLP colleagues. And we've just started a coup fellowship, and one of my fellows has had some coaching as part of that from the Tavistock, and really find that important. So I think it's an opportunity for the staff at NLFT, but also, I know we're talking about the finances being challenged, but it could potentially be an income generator as well, and expanding that work, because it's based on the clinical as well as the culture and developed here. So it's
I think
more about if you see it as an opportunity.
it's really important. And actually, so we are approaching this recognizing that there is a financial exam question to be answered. So we're approaching this from a spirit of entrepreneurial exploration. So we're looking at the services and we're saying, what can we do to power these up and to make them sustainable? And how can we go further with them and deeper into the market? So that would be our aspiration, rather than going in saying, this is a slash and burn approach. It absolutely is not that. We are looking to see how can we really make this flourish, thrive and be sustainable. And there may be some things which we collectively will come together and say, look, we're not going to be able to make the equation work here. So we'll have to do things differently. We might have to just pause that one. But we are going in with that exploration, you know, and we had a board meeting this week on Tuesday, and my notes around the table were, you know, some were going, you know, are we managing the risk? Are we doing this in the appropriate way? What is it going to do to our organisation? Can we be sustainable, etc., etc.? You'd expect them to ask those questions as part of the due diligence. We have some of our other NEDs that are saying, I've worked in education, I've worked in the entrepreneurial unit. This is a fantastic opportunity. Let's really have a look at this in a positive way. So we're it's important we explain what our mindset is, so you know how we're coming into this.
Yeah, that's helpful. Sal?
Yeah, I think to some extent, I think what I was going to say builds on that. And again, it's a comment. So we talked about the lift and shift and, you know, the balance of risks and opportunities, and clearly not only for the learning, but also to keep our regulator in the form of the students content that the quality will continue. That's important. But we have, I think, in my view, fairly rapidly for the trust to move beyond that and think about how we can maximise the opportunities, both for clinical capacity and education, and the new ways in which we might deliver things. But I think there is a huge opportunity there. For me, as someone with a background in education, that's probably one of the most exciting things. But so yes, lift and shift, but also and then what?
No, absolutely. And I think I've kind of like sort of said that what we don't want, we don't want to destabilize in the first instance by going, let's just change this, because we need to get to know it and understand it and really think about how we can take it forward. Yeah. I
mean, there is some very strange decisions being made nationally at the moment around educational commissioning, not just for the TABI generally. I think we're at a serious risk of repeating the mistakes of the past, where we suddenly realise we haven't got enough people trained, and we're just going into exactly the same situation at the moment. Hopefully the new, when it's produced, the workforce plan will start to redress some of that, so that it's not a long-term dip. But Michael at the back, you wanted to come in?
Would you mind if I come up and just read what that thing is, so that I can respond to it, because I forgot what they said.
The question.
Sorry, the question.
The one about the wait list stuff.
Yeah, it was primarily, Michael, it said that what we're doing about the 17,000 plus people that are waiting, we didn't spend enough time, or they haven't observed us spending enough time talking about it at board or at governors, and then linked it to a particular coroner's report, which partially assigned some of the responsibility for a death to us, I think, if I remember the case correctly, when the person was on the waiting list, and that we had said, we don't recognise that we'd said, but clearly this individual knows what we've said, that we'd said we would be bringing in peer support workers. We have in the organisation, but not specifically in JIG. So that's the essence of what was said. So hopefully that's enough for you to be able to say what you wish to say.
Well, I hope the person who asked that is still there.
They are.
Okay, cool. You can't see my face or anything, so I'm sitting really far in the back so that I wouldn't be constantly moving around with the camera. My name's Michael. I'm one of the governors. I'm also a service user in the adult gender service. In our PPI groups, this has been something that we've spoken about before, and we have also, as a PPI group, been invited to talk to the governors, which is quite nice. What I know that the concept of peer support workers has been discussed before, mainly because we took, I personally took great inspiration and admiration from other services who did similar things, such as TransPlus. But I do know there's been a really big push for better service user involvement as a whole with the GIC, and waitlist conversations is something that we always have It's one of the main reasons I actually became a governor was because I had big concern with the fact that there was just a bunch of people there who never knew anything and was not going to know anything. I know one of the things that we were talking about as like an idea was way back when, right before people started being seen in the services. You can't. I'm gesturing wildly. You can't see me. There would be like a kind of like a welcome day. Am I correct in saying that? Like where they would kind of be able to meet the people who are like, look, these are like the clinicians, and like all of these other people who are like part of the team that will be involved in your care when you finally get in. And that's something that's been briefly talked about. I think with peer support work, I've been a peer support worker for context in an autism team, and it's sometimes a very difficult to define role, and you can't just create peer support workers in a service. It takes a long time for them to really have their place in the service, and for those boundaries, which is important for the peer support worker themselves, for those boundaries to be helpful and useful and like productive for the person who's coming into that role, as well as for the service users who are going to experience this peer support work. I like peer support work, but I also think that better engagement with a waiting list as a whole would be good, because I mean, that many people on the waiting list, you're not going to have enough peer support workers to go around really. And I think there could be a lot more kind of I know that there is stuff that we're doing right now, isn't it? Like we have the new app thingy. I know that much.
The app thingy. I thought you were a young person, Michael. The app thingy. That's the sort of thing I would say.
But, I know about it because some of my peers who themselves have been on the wait list for quite a while have been talking about it. And I've heard nothing negative about it.
Yeah, you said earlier, which is encouraging, isn't it? That we would have heard, wouldn't we, if it was particularly not working.
If something was going real bad, we would have had it by now. But I think, yeah, regarding peer support workers, there's conversations we've been having in the PPI groups. And what we've currently been doing is coffee mornings, which I feel wholly very positively about. They happen, is it once a month on a Friday? Am I correct? Okay, people.
Yeah, I think so.
I've just started working full time, which is why I'm on Saturday. But I highly recommend going to those. Is it only for current service users or are people who are waiting allowed to come as well?
I don't know that, Michael, but I don't see why people who aren't waiting wouldn't be able to, but we can take that back.
Yeah, and maybe like
well, look at that.
Have like virtual days. I'd like that as well. But I do know that there's like a bunch of things, and it's all being guided by current service users who got to be very disgruntled and wait for like 7 years, and then turn around and tell us like what they wish they had that entire time. So
thank you. That's really helpful.
Sorry.
I'm conscious of time. Any final comments or questions before we wrap up? Because we said we were going to aim to finish them. The merger is a major change for us as students at TMP. It's reassuring to hear the commitment and work being done to minimise disruption for students. What is the thinking about oops, it moved. I was reading it. Thinking about actively engaging, communicating and holding students through the coming months of change. Retaining teaching staff is also important to stability for students, especially on long doctoral programmes. Thanks. Michael, is there anything you want to say? Because we have tried to make sure that it'd be fair to say that throughout this process, we've had to keep reminding the system that we're more than just a provider of clinical services. So the whole process for mergers, the whole business case process doesn't mention the sorts of things we do in our education and training. So we've had to constantly keep making sure that that's been reflected. And we're also conscious that therefore, because of that, we have to also be careful that we don't forget our own students in the middle of it also. I don't know if there's much you can say, Michael, by way of comment on that.
Well, so I know that Mark Beestone, our Dean, has been doing some Dean engagement sessions with the students over the time to be able to answer and support the questions around the merger. Those will be continuing through the next few months as well. So just to encourage people to attend, I think the students to attend those Dean sessions, because that is where the information particularly is going to come through, and also working with the teaching staff as well to make sure they're supported in terms of understanding what the nature of the merger is and what is going on there, because it's not just the teaching staff on the education side, the clinical staff as well, who support the learners too and the students. we need to make sure we're supporting them through the process because they will impact on the learning environment for the students as well. So it is multifaceted, and we're very clear about making sure over the next few months we need to make sure we are supporting all the staff through the process and the students and patients as well.
Okay, I'm just double check. It was just sound, it wasn't a hand or anything. Michael and then Stephen, and then I'm going to call it a day.
I just want to make a brief remark about
Thursday.
research, following what Janet said and what Stephen said, which is that the distinctive and unusual character about research at the Tavistock is related to the integration all through its history between clinical work, educational work and research work. Because a lot of the research influence that the Tavistock has been, as it were, transmitted horizontally through professional networks rather than through, as it were, a scientific community. And one of the things that we were worried about in the early discussions of the merger was the risk that this integration will be broken because the education will be hived off to a university department somewhere and lose its contact with the clinical work. So I do think preserving that relationship between clinical research, consultancy and education is the fundamental thing which has made the Tavistock what it is. And I hope that can be
And it's interesting.
or developed inside the new structure.
It's interesting, Michael, just before the comes in, one of the things we've had to make sure that the decision to significantly reduce our education training contract, that they just looked at it from the point of view of impact for education. We've said, hold on a minute, it's got all sorts of potentially wider implications for our clinical services. Lena?
No, just to say, we've got our clinical research day, I think on Monday, I'll be going to that. So we really do celebrate it. It's really important to us. And so, yeah, it's got to be integrated.
Stephen?
Yeah.
Well, in a way, it's linked. There've been quite a lot of references to national issues, and one of the things that is probably distinctive about the Tavistock is how it functions in a national environment. It has a huge national and perhaps even bigger international reputation, and so preserving that side of what the Tavistock does in the context of a trust which is primarily focused on a geographical area. It's going to be very, I think, very important if the Tavistock's going to make the contribution it should make to the new trust.
Yeah, I think just using my integrated care board hat, service users and patients don't decide to go to a particular organisation based on their geography. And it's one of the things that I've learnt is that people are mobile and they travel around. And whilst we are largely based across 5 boroughs, we recognise that TMP has got a global footprint. And if it's going to be successful, we're going to be successful in harnessing, the services and research and the education, then we will have to have that global footprint. That's an exciting opportunity for us. It really is. We're not going to want to nail it down into 5 boroughs. I want to reassure you about that, because as I've used the word before, we've got to power up what's there and give it sustainability, energy, life and opportunity.
Thank you. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I'd like to say thank you for all the presentations, and to say that there's only one thing I will miss about not being the chair at the Tavistock and Portman, that I will not miss, sorry, and that is getting up at 4:10 in the morning. This will be the last 4:10 in the morning for the last 3.5 years. But I would like to pass the baton over to our, has been our vice chair, now our chair as of Saturday, to Aruna Mehta. Aruna's been with us even longer than me. We have 2 non-executives, have been with us just about getting on for 5 years, Aruna now. About that, is it close? 4 and a bit. So I don't know whether you just want to introduce yourself and say hello before we finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone wants to go home, so I'm going to spend forever. I think it would be remiss to not thank you, John. The organisation I joined is completely was completely different to the organisation we have now, and it was a favorite form. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing us to a point that actually we look forward to. I think the word you used there was powered up future, and I think that is really what we need, and I look forward to that. I am really a kind of a just in position to deliver a glide path for me. Our future really is with NLFT, and we look forward to that. And I promise, Kathy, I will do my best to be as transparent as I possibly can with the governors and obviously with the non-executive and executive colleagues. So yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, Michael, and all the execs and non-execs. We all
And my
wanna go home
personal
now, so-
thanks as well to you, John. Thank you
Thank you very much.
for your generosity.
So, a safe home, as they say.